My name is Ray, I'm 31, the oldest sibling, the test run. The one who helped raise everyone else while our parents figured out how to parent. I always show up for family stuff, holidays, birthdays, ER visits. So when my dad texted the group chat, "You are not invited to this year's family dinner." Unfortunately, we had to make space for guests your siblings are bringing. I knew instantly, this wasn't about space. It was about story. Because this year, my siblings were hosting dinner in my apartment, the one I had to move out of after I was forced to leave my startup job, and they swooped in to sublet it for a while. And they didn't want me there because I'd ruin the version of the story they planned to tell. I was brushing my teeth when the message came through. That same dull group chat we only ever used to coordinate birthdays or remind each other whose turn it was to bring dessert. I glanced at my phone, expecting something forgettable, something like bring wine or wear red, but instead it said, "You are not invited to this year's family dinner." Unfortunately, we had to make space for guests your siblings are bringing. Sorry for the inconvenience. I froze, toothbrush halfway to the sink, foam in my mouth, the kind of moment where your body keeps moving, but your brain stops. At first I thought it was some kind of joke, like maybe my brother had borrowed Dad's phone and was messing with me. He does that sometimes, sends fake texts then follows up with laughing emojis, but the message had punctuation. It was measured, too bland to be fake, too deliberate to be casual. And it wasn't sent just to me, it was dropped into the family thread, like an announcement, like they were notifying me of a change in policy, as if I'd been rescheduled, not erased. I rinsed my mouth. Checked again, then just stared at the screen. No one followed up, which made it worse. Not even a "we'll talk later" or "call me," just silence, the kind that hums louder than noise. So I texted Jade, my sister, and asked if it was real. She replied with a single bubble. Yeah. I didn't agree with how he said it, but things got complicated. I stared at that word, complicated. As if it could explain why the family dinner, the one I helped organize for 7 straight years, had suddenly been deemed too full for me, as if friends they'd only just made were somehow more entitled to the table. I didn't respond. I didn't ask who the guests were. I already knew. It would be some of their new crew, the ones who started showing up after Marcus's startup got picked up for a seed round, the ones who called me Mom Vibes. When I asked if anyone needed water or extra forks, I had introduced most of them to the family, back when I still lived downtown, when my apartment was the place they all crashed, before I had to move out, before the job loss, before they sublet it from me and slowly made it theirs. They were hosting this year's dinner there, in that apartment, the one with the green tile backsplash I installed by hand, where I made lasagna for Jade's breakup and roasted turkey when Mom had the flu, and now I wasn't invited to it, not just uninvited, but removed, like a piece of lint brushed off a sweater sleeve. They didn't even pretend it was personal, they framed it as logistics, as if I could be shifted like furniture to make room for something shinier, more impressive, something that didn't come with backstory or unemployment or what happened to her. I walked through my new place, smaller, quieter, with cheaper blinds and no dishwasher, just me and the echo. I made tea even though I wasn't thirsty, just needed the sound, the movement. I called Mom, no answer, called her again, voicemail, checked Instagram. Saw Marcus posting a boomerang of the dining table, my old table, captioned, "Built something from the ground up." I zoomed in, saw the wine glasses I bought when I still believed I'd be the one to host this year. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, practiced, tidy, like something they'd rehearsed. I wasn't angry, just hollow. I thought about all the weekends I'd driven across town to dog sit, the nights I'd Venmo'd Jade for Ubers, the 100 little ways I kept things glued together while they figured their lives out, and now, because mine had cracked a little, they'd decided I didn't fit the aesthetic anymore. I was too, between things, too undefined, too much of a reminder that success isn't always linear, that you can be the foundation and still be left out of the photo. I didn't need revenge, I just needed air, needed to understand when the shift happened. I left the tea steeping and walked outside, the night air sharp and unsentimental. I wasn't crying, I was just thinking, counting the years I had poured into people who now called me inconvenient. I checked my phone again, hoping maybe someone had changed their mind. Maybe Mom would call and say, "Your dad didn't mean it like that," but nothing came. Just silence and a new photo from the group thread. Jade smiling next to Marcus's friend Sean, captioned "Family, the ones you choose." I read it twice, once with disbelief, the second time with clarity. I woke up to sunlight on my face and 3 unread messages from Jade. The first one said, "You're still my sister." The second, "Don't make this a thing." And the third, "We didn't think it would matter since you haven't really been around lately." I sat with that one. Reread it once, then again slower, as if the syllables might shift and soften, but they didn't. It felt rehearsed, like something said in meetings, the kind where people decide how to explain absence, how to rebrand someone's distance so it feels like a natural phase, not something they caused. They'd already started repackaging me. I could feel it. I could see it in the photos they were posting, long captions about perseverance and teamwork. Photos taken in my old living room with furniture I bought from secondhand shops when I still believed in making things beautiful. Marcus wrote something about leveling up with the people who stuck around. And Jade commented fire emojis like they were being paid to agree. It was weird, watching myself be edited out in real time, knowing there were still glasses in that kitchen with lipstick prints they wouldn't wash off properly. When Mom finally called back, her voice was soft in a way that made me brace. She asked how I was. I said fine. She said, "You know your brother's been through a lot lately, and we're just trying to support him while this funding thing takes off." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Then she said, "They didn't mean anything by it," and I asked, "Would you have said that if it were me doing the uninviting?" There was a pause, not long, but long enough. Then she sighed and changed the subject to a pie recipe. The truth is, I didn't really want the dinner itself. I wanted the belonging, the mess of it, the arguing over who burned the bread rolls, the way we always got too loud when we played Uno after dessert. I wanted to be part of the part they showed the world. Not hidden in the group chat like a forgotten thread, not quietly cut from the picture like a name on an old RSVP. It wasn't about ego. It was about memory, about showing up with the mashed potatoes and still being someone they counted on to bring more than food. I walked into a coffee shop that afternoon, saw 3 of Marcus's friends sitting near the window. One of them, Sean, waved me over like nothing had happened, said, "Hey, Ray, we're just talking about the pitch deck." I forced a smile, said I had to grab and go. He leaned back in his chair, said, "Sucks you're not coming Sunday. We were all looking forward to your apple crumble." I blinked once, said, "Guess there wasn't enough room for dessert." His laugh was too loud, a little guilty, like he thought he was being charming, like they all did. Later that night, I got a message from our cousin Lena, a photo from 3 years ago, all of us crowded in my apartment, Marcus playing guitar, Jade asleep on the floor with a blanket over her. Lena wrote, "Crazy how much things change." I stared at it for a while, the kind of while where you forget the tea's getting cold. I didn't know if she was trying to comfort me or remind me. Either way, it worked. I remembered how full that space had once felt, how people used to call me the glue, how I thought that meant permanence. Dad didn't say anything, not directly, but he reposted Marcus's Instagram video on Facebook with a caption that said, "Proud of these two and what they're building together." The word stung because I knew what they were building it with: my name, my hours, my contacts, the early versions of everything they were now calling their own. I wasn't bitter, but I was aware, and being aware made it impossible to unsee how easy it had been for them to move on from me, to turn my history into their marketing, to swap my name out for their momentum. By the time Sunday came, I had stopped checking the thread. I muted the chat, turned my phone on Do Not Disturb, made pasta alone with too much garlic and way too much cheese. I watched a holiday movie where everyone forgave each other too quickly and thought, maybe it wasn't always supposed to be dramatic. Maybe sometimes people just choose each other in rooms you're not invited to, and you get to choose something else in return. I lit a candle, opened the window, heard laughter float down from the apartment above, and let myself sit with it, quiet. Tuesday morning came with a voicemail from someone I hadn't heard from in months, Asha, one of Marcus's old business school contacts. Her voice was upbeat, curious. She said she'd been introduced to a pitch deck from the twins and noticed it looked familiar. She remembered that some of the phrasing matched something I'd shared with her over coffee last spring. "Just checking if you're still part of the project," she said, and I sat there, cereal in hand, listening to my own words in someone else's mouth, the deck, the vision, even the pricing model. I had built the bones of it. I called her back, casual as I could manage, told her I wasn't involved anymore, that the structure was probably similar because, well, we all used to brainstorm together. She laughed, said, "Yeah, but it's your writing style, Ray." And then quietly asked if I was okay. I said I was, because it was easier, because explaining why your siblings erased you requires a kind of energy you don't always have before 9 a.m. She didn't press, she just said, "You should protect your work," and I promised her I would, even though I didn't know what that would look like now. Later that afternoon, I went digging through old files, pulled out the original proposal I'd sketched on my bedroom floor during lockdown, crumpled notes, screenshots, even a voice memo where I'd practiced the opening pitch out loud. I sounded nervous but sharp, like someone who still thought her ideas had a place. The timestamps were all there, dated and undeniable. I remembered staying up late to help Marcus understand user flow, remembered Jade sitting beside me as I diagrammed the whole thing on a piece of cardboard because the whiteboard was still packed in the closet. Around 4 p.m., I texted Marcus, just one line, "You should update your deck before someone else notices." He replied in under a minute, "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer right away, didn't owe him that, waited another hour, then sent a screenshot of the draft with my initials in the footer. He didn't reply, not that night, not even the next morning. But I saw he removed the post about the project from his Instagram story. I saw that silence too, not defensive, just slow, uneasy, the kind that means you've been caught in something you thought was buried. That same night, Jade messaged me out of nowhere, "Hey, can we talk? I didn't know he was using your stuff, I didn't believe that, but I called anyway." Her voice was quieter than usual, like someone was in the room, or maybe guilt just sounds like that, she said. "He told everyone you gave up on it, that you didn't want to be involved," and I asked her, "Did you believe that?" She paused, long enough for me to hear her swallow, then said, "It was easier than asking you what happened," and somehow, that hurt more than if she'd said yes. I sat on the floor after the call, surrounded by pieces of a project that no longer had my name on it, not officially anyway, and I realized something simple. They weren't trying to destroy me, they were trying to simplify me. To fold me into a version of the story that didn't include how messy it got when I left my job, how hard it was to watch everyone else take off while I circled the runway. I wasn't tragic enough to mourn, just inconvenient to acknowledge. And maybe that was worse, maybe. Being forgotten feels sharper than being attacked. The next morning, I printed a copy of the draft, slipped it into a folder, and walked it over to my lawyer friend Danny's office. She offered me coffee, sat down across from me, and said, "You sure you want to go this route?" I nodded, not out of anger, but because if someone's going to profit off your labor, they should at least be honest about where it came from. Danny said she'd write a simple notice, something polite but clear. Something that made it impossible to pretend I hadn't existed in this thing they were building out of borrowed bricks. That weekend, Dad sent me a photo of the family cat in a Christmas sweater, no caption. Just the image. I didn't reply, just looked at it, then tucked my phone under a blanket. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. Just tired of watching people use softness as a shortcut to repair. Like if you send something cute, it means you're ready to talk again. Maybe one day I'll write back. Maybe I won't. Either way, I've stopped refreshing the thread. Stopped hoping for a version of the story where I'm invited back just to make it look whole. Jade called again on a Thursday afternoon while I was folding laundry. Her voice came in hesitant, carrying that careful tone people use when they're walking back into a room they slam the door on. She said, "We're thinking of doing a follow-up dinner, smaller. More casual, just family." I waited, kept folding the same pair of socks. She added, "It'd be nice if you were there," and I asked her, "Is that what you want or what looks better for the recap?" She was quiet for a second, then said, "People asked why you weren't there," which wasn't an answer. The phrase sat heavy in the air. People asked, not "we missed you," not "it felt wrong," just "they noticed," like absence was only inconvenient if it raised questions. I didn't say anything, just set the socks down and leaned against the edge of the bed. She tried again. Said, "You've always been the one who pulls things together. It didn't feel right without you." And I asked, "Then why didn't anyone pull me back in?" She didn't have a reply, And in that moment, I didn't need one. I just needed to know she heard the question land. Later that evening, my phone lit up with Marcus's name. He hadn't called since the screenshot. His voice was lighter than I expected, almost forced, he said. Just wanted to clear the air, that thing with the deck. It got out of hand. I stayed quiet. He continued. It wasn't malicious, just messy. We weren't trying to take credit. We just thought you were done, I said. You didn't think, you assumed. And he said, same difference, and I almost laughed. Because that's the problem. They think rewriting something is the same as continuing it. That silence means surrender, that I'd be fine with it. I asked him directly, would you have ever mentioned me if no one called it out? And he replied, we probably would have figured something out, which didn't mean yes, didn't mean no, just something vague enough to stretch across a dinner table without snapping. I told him I'd moved on, which wasn't a lie, just incomplete. Because I hadn't moved on from the disappointment, just from expecting anything better. He said, you're still family, and I said, so is the cat, but at least he got a sweater. We both fell silent after that, the kind of silence where neither of us knew what to fix. That weekend, I went back through my email, found a message from a nonprofit I'd consulted for 2 years ago. They were relaunching, asked if I could help reframe their messaging. I said yes before overthinking it, dove into the work like a lifeline. It felt good to be asked for my mind, not my space, not my silence, just the part of me that used to light up in rooms where no one was competing, just building. I stayed up till 2 a.m. Drafting taglines, rewriting brand pillars. Something about it felt clean, like walking into a room where nothing was missing. Sunday came again, but it didn't sting this time. I cooked a small dinner, just roasted vegetables and rice. I played music, left the window open, heard laughter from down the hall, but didn't look out. My phone buzzed once with a photo. Jade, holding up a plate, saved you a seat anyway. No caption, no expectation. Just a picture. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Some things don't require answers. Just time, and space, and a little room for people to grow into their own apologies, whether they ever say them out loud or not. Later that night, I pulled a quilt over my lap, the one Mom made when I left for college. The stitches were fraying along the edges, but it still held warmth. I thought about how easily people mistake presence for peace, how being somewhere doesn't mean you're being seen. And maybe that's what I'd needed all along, not to be welcomed back in, but to be known without having to audition for it. I closed the window, turned off the light, let the quiet come in soft this time, like something earned, not owed. The next morning I wrote a list, not of goals, but of things I'd built. Projects, dinners, leases, friendships that held, memories that stretched across rooms and years. I added the nonprofit to it. Then a small note at the bottom. I was always here. It didn't need to be profound, just real. I made coffee, opened the window again, let the light touch the counter, and thought, maybe I'd host next year, maybe I wouldn't, but either way, the table would be mine, and whoever sat at it would know exactly who made the seat they were sitting in. The email came on a Wednesday morning, subject line in all caps, Family Dinner 2.0, everyone included, sent from Dad's address. But the tone read like Jade, the kind of cheerful but careful wording that tries too hard to sound casual, the body said. We want to try again. Better this time. Smaller group. Just us. Hope you can make it. There was no apology. No mention of last time. Just a calendar invite and a smiley face at the end, like that would patch over what had already unraveled. I stared at it while waiting for the kettle to boil, letting the steam fog up the kitchen window. Outside, someone was walking their dog in mismatched pajamas, the way people do when they live somewhere long enough to stop performing. I thought about performing. About all the years I had shown up with the right dish, the right mood, the right ability to make everyone else feel comfortable, even when I wasn't, even when I'd cried in the car 10 minutes before knocking on the door with store-bought dessert and a fixed smile. I didn't decline right away, didn't accept either, just let the invite sit unread while I went about my day. I had a meeting with the nonprofit team, helped a junior designer revise their pitch, made lunch, answered emails, cleaned the counters, folded 2 loads of laundry, and somewhere between folding towels and checking my inbox again, I realized I wasn't avoiding the dinner because I was angry. I just didn't want to walk back into a room where I'd have to shrink in order to fit, where my worth was only recognized if it made someone else look better. That night, Jade sent a follow-up, just a photo of the table half set, some dishes out, cloth napkins folded the way I used to do them. The caption said, "We'll keep your seat open." There was something in that gesture, something that almost made me soften. But not enough. I liked my own table now, small as it was, scratched at the corners, uneven legs from moving too often. But mine, I had put everything on it with my own hands, and the people who sat around it came because they saw me, not because I kept the stories intact. I ended up calling Mom instead, her voice surprised but warm. We talked about the cat for too long, then the weather, then she asked, "You saw the invite?" And I said I did. She paused, then said, "It's okay if you don't come, we just thought it was time." And I asked her, "Time for what?" She didn't answer right away, just let the silence hold, then said, "Maybe time to admit we didn't handle things right." It wasn't an apology, but it was a first brick towards something more stable than pretending. I didn't give her an answer, just said I was still thinking, which was true. Later that week, I ran into Lena at the grocery store. She asked if I'd be at the dinner. I said probably not. She nodded like she already knew, then said, "Honestly, it's a little weird without you." And I smiled, not because it felt good to be missed, but because someone finally said it out loud, not in a message or a photo or a half-hearted invite, but in real time, in the fruit aisle, next to a pyramid of bruised pears. The night of the dinner, I turned off my phone, made a pasta bake, invited Danny over with her boyfriend and a friend of his I'd never met. We sat at my table, laughed too loud, knocked over a glass, talked about cities we'd never been to. Someone brought cake. Someone else brought a story that made my ribs ache from laughing. No one asked me to prove anything. No one mentioned family, and that quiet, that lack of expectation, felt like something sacred, like space I had carved out of years I spent holding the door open for everyone else. When they texted the next day, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I already knew they'd noticed I wasn't there, and this time, I didn't feel like I had to explain it. Some stories you step out of, not because you want revenge, or justice, or proof, but because you finally realized the version of you they kept inviting wasn't you anymore. It was a character you used to play. I still loved them, in a way, but I didn't need to sit at their table to feel full. I had one of my own now. And it was enough.